In the outermost ring of the Velcara system, beyond the reach of most civilized star routes, there existed a world that few had ever seen, and even fewer had survived. Illithra. It was a planet of paradoxes. From orbit, it appeared serene, a soft emerald sphere wrapped in shimmering violet clouds. But beneath that beauty lay something far more dangerous. The ecosystem of Illithra operated on rules no human science had ever fully understood. Gravity shifted unpredictably. Time itself seemed to bend in subtle ways. And at the heart of it all lived a species so feared that entire fleets avoided the system altogether. They were called the Aryans. Small in stature, no taller than a human child, they possessed bodies that shimmered like living crystal, refracting light into colors that changed with their emotions. But their size was a deception. Every Aryan was born with the ability to manipulate energy fields at a molecular level. They could tear ships apart without touching them. They could stop hearts from across a battlefield. They were untouchable. And among them, there was one who stood above all. Her name was Lyra. Lyra was smaller than most of her kind, even fragile by Aryan standards. Where others glowed with intense, radiant hues, her light was soft, almost dim. Many underestimated her when she was young, mistaking her quiet nature for weakness. They learned quickly. Lyra possessed a rare ability, something no other Aryan had demonstrated in centuries. She could manipulate not just energy, but intent. She could feel thoughts before they formed. She could anticipate actions before they occurred. To her enemies, it seemed like she existed one step ahead of reality itself. By the time she reached maturity, Lyra had never been touched, not in battle, not in challenge, not even by accident. She was untouchable. Far beyond Illithra, humanity had only just begun to push into deep space. The United Terran Coalition had expanded rapidly over the past 50 years, driven by a hunger for resources and discovery. Most of their missions ended in routine surveys, mineral extractions, or diplomatic encounters with lesser-developed species. But then came the signal. It wasn't a distress call. It wasn't even intentional. It was a fragment, an echo of energy patterns unlike anything human instruments had ever recorded. The signal came from Illithra. And so, against all warnings, they sent a ship. The UTC Horizon was not a warship. It was a research vessel, equipped with the latest scanning technologies and a small crew of specialists. Among them was Dr. Elias Vance. Elias was not a soldier. He wasn't even particularly brave. He was a xenobiologist, someone who had spent his entire career studying alien ecosystems from a safe distance. He preferred data to danger, analysis to action. So when he was assigned to a mission venturing into one of the most uncharted and potentially hostile regions of space, he almost refused. Almost. But curiosity had always been his weakness. The Horizon entered Illithra's orbit without incident. At first, sensors went wild almost immediately. Energy readings fluctuated beyond measurable limits. Gravity pockets formed and dissipated unpredictably. The ship's AI struggled to maintain stability. "This place doesn't make sense," one of the engineers muttered. Elias didn't respond. He was staring at the main display, at the surface, at the flickers of light that moved like living beings. The first contact was not planned. It happened when a scanning drone descended too close to the surface. The drone's feed showed a forest unlike anything on Earth, trees that spiraled upward in impossible shapes, their branches pulsing with bioluminescent light. The air itself seemed alive, shimmering with particles that drifted like glowing dust. And then, the drone stopped. Not malfunctioned. Stopped. As if something had decided it should no longer move. The feed shifted. And there she was. Lyra. She hovered just above the forest floor, her crystalline form glowing faintly. Compared to the massive alien environment around her, she seemed almost insignificant. Small, fragile. But the readings told a different story. Every instrument on the horizon spiked simultaneously. Energy levels beyond catastrophic thresholds. "Pull the drone back," the captain ordered. They tried. Nothing happened. Lyra tilted her head slightly, observing the machine with what could only be described as curiosity. And then, the feed cut to black. Elias couldn't sleep that night. He replayed the footage over and over, analyzing every frame. There was something different about her. Not just the energy, not just the control, but the way she had looked at the drone. It wasn't hostility. It wasn't aggression. It was interest. Against protocol, Elias requested permission to lead a surface expedition. The captain refused. He requested again, and again, until finally, reluctantly, a compromise was made. A single-person descent. Minimal equipment. No weapons. "If anything goes wrong," the captain said, "we're pulling you out. No heroics." Elias nodded. He wasn't planning on being a hero. The moment his boots touched the surface of Illithra, he felt it. The air hummed, not audibly but inside his mind, like the planet itself was aware of him, watching, waiting. He took a cautious step forward, then another. Every instinct told him he was being observed. "Hello," he called out, his voice sounding small in the vast alien forest. No response. He activated his scanner. Immediately, it overloaded. "Of course," he muttered. And then, a flicker of light. He turned, and there she was. Lyra hovered several meters away, her form glowing softly. Up close, she was even smaller than he had imagined. Child-sized. Delicate. Her surface refracted light in shifting patterns, like a living prism. Elias froze. Every report, every warning, every piece of data screamed one thing. Do not approach. But she didn't attack. She didn't move. She simply watched. "I'm not here to hurt you," Elias said, raising his hand slowly. It was a pointless gesture. If she wanted him dead, he would already be gone. Lyra tilted her head. For a moment, nothing happened. And then, Elias felt it. A presence. Not physical. Mental. Something brushing against his thoughts. Lyra had never encountered a human mind before. It was strange. Chaotic. Loud. But also open. Unlike other species she had encountered, Elias's thoughts weren't shielded by instinctive defenses. He didn't know how to hide them. And what she saw surprised her. He wasn't thinking about weapons, or strategies, or fear. He was thinking about her, not as a threat, but as a mystery. "You can hear me, can't you?" Elias said quietly. Lyra's glow shifted slightly. A soft pulse of color. "Yes." Days passed. Then weeks. Elias returned to the surface again and again, each time pushing the boundaries of what was considered safe. And each time, Lyra was there. They didn't speak, not in words, but they communicated. Through thoughts, through emotions, through shared moments of understanding. For the first time in her life, Lyra experienced something she had never known. Uncertainty. Not in battle, not in power, but in connection. Elias couldn't be predicted the way others could. His thoughts were too fluid, too unpredictable. He surprised her. And for the first time in his life, Elias experienced something equally profound. Fear. Not of death, but of losing something he didn't fully understand. The other Aryans began to notice. Lyra's behavior was changing. She spent less time among them. She allowed a foreign being, an unpredictable, fragile human, to exist within their domain. To them, it was unacceptable. The confrontation came without warning. Elias had just arrived when the sky itself seemed to fracture. Dozens of Aryans descended, their forms blazing with intense light. The air vibrated with power. Lyra moved in front of Elias instantly. Protective. Defiant. "You cannot allow this," one of the elders projected, their voice resonating in both mind and space. "He is weak," another added. "Unstable. Dangerous." Lyra's glow intensified. "He is different." The elders didn't hesitate. Energy surged. Reality bent. And for the first time, Lyra was attacked. Elias couldn't comprehend what he was seeing. The air twisted. Light clashed against light. The ground fractured beneath invisible forces. And at the center of it all, Lyra. For the first time in her life, she struggled. She had always been untouchable. But this wasn't a battle of strength. It was a battle of belief. And for the first time, she doubted. Elias didn't think. He acted. He ran forward, straight into the storm. "Stop," he shouted. It was absurd, meaningless, but it broke something. Just for a moment. Lyra felt it. Not power, not strategy, but something far more dangerous. Trust. And in that moment, everything changed. Her energy shifted, not outward, but inward, then exploded. A wave of force rippled across the battlefield, not destructive, but transformative. The attacking Aryans froze, not because they were restrained, but because they understood. Lyra wasn't fighting them. She was showing them something they had never considered. Connection. The energy faded. The silence was absolute. The elders withdrew, not defeated, but changed. Elias collapsed to his knees, breathless. Lyra hovered in front of him, her glow softer than ever. "You almost got me killed," he said weakly, a faint smile forming. Lyra's light flickered. Amusement. For the first time in the history of Illithra, an Aryan had been touched. Not physically, but fundamentally. And, for the first time, they were no longer untouchable. The silence that followed was not empty. It was alive. It stretched across the forest, across the skies of Illithra, and deep into the consciousness of every Aryan present. The air no longer vibrated with hostility. It pulsed with something unfamiliar. Reflection. Elias remained on his knees, his breath uneven, his heart pounding like it might tear itself free from his chest. He didn't fully understand what had just happened, only that he had stepped into something far beyond human comprehension and somehow survived. Slowly, he looked up. Lyra hovered before him, but she was different now. Her glow was no longer soft or dim. It had depth. Layers of color moved within her crystalline form, gold, violet, deep blue, like emotions given light. She wasn't just radiating power anymore. She was radiating meaning. "You changed," Elias whispered. The words weren't spoken aloud. They didn't need to be. Lyra felt them. And for the first time, she didn't just understand a thought. She felt its weight. Around them, the other Aryans remained suspended in the air, motionless, not frozen, but processing. For a species that had evolved beyond hesitation, beyond doubt, this moment was unprecedented. The elder who had spoken before drifted forward. Their glow was no longer sharp or aggressive. It flickered, uncertain. "You have altered the pattern," the elder projected. The words carried no anger, only truth. Lyra didn't retreat. She didn't shield Elias. She simply responded, "Yes." Another ripple passed through the collective. Not disagreement, not approval, recognition. For cycles beyond memory, another elder voice echoed, We have existed without variance, without unpredictability, without disruption. A pause. Then, this human is all three. Elias let out a quiet, nervous laugh. Glad I could help, he muttered under his breath. Lyra caught the thought. A flicker of amusement danced across her light again. But the moment didn't last, because something deeper was unfolding. The planet itself began to respond. The forests of Illithra shimmered more intensely than before. The glowing particles in the air gathered in slow spirals. Even the gravity shifts seemed to stabilize, as if the world itself had been waiting for this exact moment. Elias felt it again, that presence. But now it wasn't watching. It was acknowledging. What is happening? Elias asked. Lyra didn't answer immediately, because for the first time, she didn't know. And that realization alone was monumental. The elders sensed it too. Their collective awareness turned, not toward Elias this time, but toward Lyra. You have broken certainty, one of them said. And created possibility, another added. That word lingered. Possibility. For a species that could predict outcomes before they happened, possibility had always been irrelevant. Now, it was everything. Elias slowly stood, his legs still shaky. So, this is good, right? He asked. No one answered directly, but no one attacked. And that, for now, was enough. Days passed, but time on Illithra no longer felt the same. The horizon remained in orbit, its crew watching in stunned disbelief as the planet's energy readings stabilized into patterns that had never been recorded before. For the first time since arriving, their instruments began to make sense. On the surface, Elias stayed. Not because he was ordered to, but because leaving felt wrong. Lyra met him each day, but their interactions changed. Before, she had observed him. Now, she engaged. She began asking questions. Not through words, but through shared thought. Why do humans hesitate? Why do they fear what they don't understand? Why do they choose connection even when it leads to pain? Elias didn't always have answers, but he tried. And in trying, he gave her something no Aryan had ever experienced. Perspective. In return, Lyra showed him things no human had ever witnessed. She revealed how Aryans perceived time, not as a straight line, but as overlapping waves of probability. She showed him how energy could be shaped not just by force, but by intention. She let him feel what it was like to exist without physical limitation. And yet, despite all that power, Elias noticed something. You've never lived, have you? He said one evening. Lyra paused. I mean really lived, he clarified. Not just existed. Not just known things. But felt them. Unexpectedly. Messily. Lyra searched his thoughts. And for once, she didn't find a clear answer. That unsettled her. But it also drew her closer. Weeks turned into months. The other Aryans began to change as well. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But subtly. Some began to observe Elias from a distance. Others attempted limited contact. Brief exchanges of thought, cautious and controlled. A few even experimented with something completely foreign to them. Uncertainty. And with it, curiosity. But not everyone welcomed the change. Deep within Illithra's collective consciousness, a faction remained resistant. They viewed the shift as contamination. A flaw. A deviation from perfection. And perfection, to them, was sacred. The fracture within the Aryan collective grew. Not violently, but ideologically. Lyra stood at the center of it. You must choose, one of the resistant voices warned her. Return to what we were, or continue into what we cannot control. Lyra didn't answer immediately, because now, She understood something she never had before. Choice wasn't about prediction. It wasn't about outcomes.
It was about belief.
She turned to Elias. "What would you do?" she asked. Elias exhaled slowly. "That's the thing," he said. "Humans don't always know if they're making the right choice." He smiled faintly. "We just make it anyway." Lyra processed that, not as logic, but as feeling. And in that moment, she chose. "I will not return," she declared. The words echoed across the planet, through every Aryan, through every layer of consciousness. "I will move forward." The response was immediate, not conflict, not rejection, but division. Some followed her. Others withdrew completely. For the first time in their existence, the Aryans were no longer one unified will. They were individuals, and it all traced back to one moment, one human, one choice. Elias stood beside Lyra as the sky of Illithra shimmered in new, unpredictable patterns. "So, what happens now?" he asked. Lyra looked out across her world. No longer perfectly ordered, no longer predictable, but alive in a way it had never been before. "Now," she said softly, "we discover what it means to become." Elias smiled. "Yeah," he said, "that sounds about right." Far above them, the horizon prepared to depart, not as conquerors, not as explorers claiming territory, but as witnesses. They would return to humanity with a message, not of danger, not of power, but of transformation. Because on a distant world once ruled by certainty, something impossible had happened. A being who was small and untouchable had been changed, not by force, not by power, but by something far more unpredictable, a human. And in that change, an entire civilization found something it had never known.